Okay, so this time you've handed us a whole bunch of stuff about what goes on outside of business. The suppliers, the supply chains, the groups that try to sort of push and pull the business in different directions. It's a lot.
Yeah, we're diving deep into your pasted text today to really tease out what these external forces are and why they're so important for businesses to understand. No business is an island, right?
Right. So let's start simple. Suppliers. The material defines them as, the people or companies that give a business what it needs to operate. And we're not just talking raw materials
No,
here.
no, no. We're talking equipment machinery, the money they need to run, even just crucial information. All of that comes from suppliers.
And it seems like this whole relationship between a business and its suppliers is like the bedrock of everything. Like the material stresses how vital it is to have a network of suppliers you can really count on. If something goes wrong at the source, it can really mess things up down the line.
Imagine, right, you're a business and you need this one key part to make your product, but there's only one supplier for it.
Yeah, that sounds risky.
It is. What if that supplier has a fire or some kind of financial meltdown? Your whole production could grind to a halt. And that's why a lot of smart businesses will have two suppliers for those crucial components.
Even if it costs a bit more upfront.
Exactly. It's like insurance.
Yeah.
Because the cost of shutting down completely could be way, way worse.
But then on the other hand, if you've got tons of suppliers, doesn't that create a whole other set of headaches?
Yeah.
The material mentions that you might lose control, especially if you're a big company with suppliers all over the world. How do you even know what they're up to?
That's where you need to be really careful about who you partner with. You need to do your homework.
Due diligence.
Due diligence. You've got to really vet these potential suppliers, look into their finances, their ethics, how they operate before you sign on the dotted line.
Okay, that makes sense. Now this leads us to the supply chain. All those suppliers a business relies on. It's not just a straight line from point A to B, though, is it?
Definitely not. The material lays it out like a journey with multiple stops. First, you have to get those raw materials from somewhere. Then it's off to manufacturing, where the components are made and everything gets put together. Then it's storage, and finally getting those products into the hands of customers. Lots of moving parts.
And the material really hammers home how crucial it is to manage this whole supply chain well. I mean, it's obvious. No resources, no production.
And even if you have the resources, the quality of those resources really matters. If you use shoddy materials, your final product is going to be shoddy too. Simple as that. And that's going to hurt your reputation, and customers won't be happy.
Right. And then there's a whole thing about keeping up with demand. If you don't have enough stuff flowing through your supply chain at the right time, you're going to have trouble fulfilling orders. And then you're losing sales and disappointing people.
And it's not just about getting the right amount at the right time anymore. You've got to think about sustainability too. The material talks about greener supply chains, and that's become a huge deal.
Yeah, everyone's more aware of the environmental impact these days. It's not just about being cheap and efficient anymore. Customers and all sorts of groups are putting pressure on businesses to make sure their suppliers are operating ethically. It's like the whole chain has to be responsible.
Like in the material, they give the example of this company, Etico. They're super transparent about their suppliers. They tell you where they are, what our employment practices are like, who works there, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, so they really walk the walk.
Exactly. It's not just talk with them. So yeah, when you're a business thinking about where to get your resources, it's clear that just going for the cheapest option isn't good enough. The material lists a bunch of things you have to think about.
Right, like where are these suppliers located? How far away are they? How quickly can they get you what you need? What about the quality of their stuff? Is it consistently good? And then, of course, you have to look at the price and compare different suppliers.
Absolutely. You want the best value, which doesn't always mean the cheapest. You want a good balance of cost, reliability, ethical practices, the whole package. It's about finding the suppliers that are the best match for your specific business, like the material says.
Now let's talk about these other forces that can shape a business. Special interest groups. The groups that try to get a business to do things their way. They can really change the game.
Yeah, the material defines them as groups that are actively trying to influence a business to adopt specific policies or procedures. They can make a big difference in how a business operates.
And these groups come in all shapes and sizes, right? The material breaks them down into categories. Like you've got your specific issue groups. They're laser focused on one particular thing.
Exactly. Whether it's youth unemployment or civil liberties, anti-globalization, environmental protection, they are all about that one issue. And because they're so focused, their advocacy can really put pressure on businesses.
Like they give the example of these big mining companies, Rio Tinto, BHP, Billiton. They get a lot of heat from environmental groups. And it's not just protests. These groups can force companies to change how they operate, like the material mentions environmental impact studies and rehabilitation efforts.
And this is just a small example of the bigger picture. Businesses are under a microscope these days when it comes to their social and environmental impact. These special interest groups are like watchdogs, making sure companies are accountable for their actions.
Okay, then you've got your business associations. These are interesting because they're actually there to help businesses.
Right, they're like a support system, they offer training, education, advice, and they advocate for their members. They want to promote businesses and their interests.
The material talks about the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the ACCI. They're a big deal. They represent Australian businesses all over the country and even internationally.
And their research and reports can be really helpful for businesses when they're planning.
But it's not just the big national groups. The material also mentions Family Business Australia and the Small Business Association of Australia. So there are groups for all kinds of businesses.
Exactly. They offer more specific resources and support tailored to the needs of different types of businesses.
Now let's talk about unions. Most people know what they are. It's workers banding together to fight for better pay and working conditions.
And from a business perspective, what's really important is that they can impact a company's internal workings. They represent their members when it comes to negotiating things like pay and work rules, making sure things are fair and safe for employees.
So a business that's dealing with a union might have to think about things like higher labor costs or changes to how they do things, and that can definitely affect their planning and budget.
Absolutely. It's not just about the immediate impact. It can also affect their long-term goals and financial projections.
Then you have your consumer groups. They're basically looking out for us, the people buying stuff.
They're all about fair practices. They watch things like product safety packaging, pricing, advertising, making sure everything is above board.
And they mentioned Choice IoT in the material, Australia's main consumer advocacy group. They do product testing reviews, public awareness campaigns. They can really make a difference.
It just shows you that businesses can't operate in a vacuum. They have to care about what consumers think. If a consumer group comes out against a company, it can really hurt their reputation and their bottom line.
In the material, they wrap things up by reminding us that special interest groups like those unions we were talking about, they can actually force businesses to change how they do things. Like even without the picture, they mentioned the idea of protesters getting GrowCon to improve safety standards. Public pressure can really push companies to make changes.
So when you look at everything together, the big takeaway is that all these external forces are connected. How you manage your supply chain, the ethics of it, the different groups trying to influence you, it's all intertwined. And it all affects how well a business can operate and whether it can succeed in the long run.
Right. So understanding all this isn't just some theoretical thing. It's essential for anyone who wants to navigate the business world. Knowing where your stuff comes from, what the risks are, who might try to sway you, it's all crucial for making smart decisions and building a business that can weather any storm.
And that brings us to a really important question for you to ponder. With supply chains becoming increasingly global and all these different special interest groups getting more and more influential, how can businesses stay ahead of the curve? How can they be proactive and deal with these external pressures in the years to come? It's a constantly changing landscape, so being able to anticipate these challenges is going to be key.
Food for thought.